I'm Jedi Master Josh. Today we're going to talk about the insanity of the media, which is ironic because they are now calling Donald Trump insane. So the media has been out to get Trump from day one. Before he was even inaugurated, you had these fantasies coming out of the likes of CNN about what would happen if during the inauguration, if everybody basically got blown up, and it would just be left up to Obama, cabinet member to be the president for a little while. It was literally this insane piece that was ran by CNN on January 18th, titled "Who is Designated Survivor at Inauguration?" Let's play that real quick.
Just about every measure of America's security apparatus, including 28,000 law enforcement personnel, will be on the ground in Washington when President Obama hands off his office to Donald Trump on Friday. A near army in place to protect the leaders of all branches of government gathered in one place outside. And while officials stress there's no specific, credible threat to this inauguration, tonight, due to a quirk in America's rules for succession, questions remain about just who would be in charge if an attack hit the incoming president, vice president, and congressional leaders just as the transfer of power is underway.
Here you have a very confusing line of succession.
According to the Constitution, if the president and vice president are killed or incapacitated, next in line is the House Speaker, then the president pro tempore of the Senate. But what if something happened to them at the inauguration too? After that, it goes down the list of cabinet secretaries, starting with Secretary of State. On the day of the inauguration, as a precaution, a cabinet secretary called the designated presidential successor will not attend the inauguration, ready to step in if something happens. But it won't be a Trump cabinet secretary, since none of them have been confirmed yet. It will be an Obama appointee.
I mean, we're just saying, if for some reason, everybody just happened to get blown up at the inauguration or whatever, it would just happen to be a Obama cabinet member. I mean, wouldn't that just be such a horrible thing? Just an insane piece, and it got universally hated by the entire internet. It currently sits at 855 upvotes and 15,000 downvotes, as it very well should, but it just shows, it's a little glimpse into the sort of fanatical insanity of the left when it comes to taking down Trump, or just having bizarre, insane fantasies about him being removed from office in some extraordinary way. So they're basically just grasping at straws from the very beginning. But for a while, they've been running with the Russian collusion narrative. The problem is that it's now starting to completely collapse. So what they're shifting towards now, and what you're seeing pop up, is the 25th Amendment. Now, we'll get into the 25th Amendment in a little bit more detail here in a bit. But first, I just want to sort of outline a few things. So you've seen an increase in the media just saying that Trump is basically crazy, that he's insane. I mean, look at his tweets, man. He talks about North Korea. He says that we have a bigger nuclear button. Does he even know that it's not an actual button like that? I mean, they run all these crazy pieces. They say he's insane. They say that he's going to get us into World War III. And more now you're seeing this push in the media, this narrative that Trump is actually crazy, that he's actually insane, that he's not mentally fit to be the president of the United States. Now, you saw, for instance, a psychiatrist who recently just met with a number of members of Congress saying that, indeed, Trump is probably crazy and he's going to, kill us all. You've also got Adam Schiff, Representative Adam Schiff, the contemptible Adam Schiff, saying that everyone in Congress is concerned with Trump's mental fitness for office. I mean, my God, man, he wants to lower our taxes. He wants us to actually have a border. He doesn't think you should disrespect the flag. He doesn't think the government's doing a good job when it comes to being involved in education. He thinks Obamacare is a total disaster. He doesn't think that cops are randomly killing black people. My God, he must be crazy. He doesn't think global warming is going to destroy the planet. My God, the man must be insane. He thinks there's only two genders. Goodness gracious, he's completely lost it. So it's literal craziness being projected onto Trump from the other side in many ways. And then it actually prompted Trump to come out with a hilarious tweet with Trump saying, Actually, throughout my life, my two greatest assets have been mental stability and being, like, really smart. Crooked Hillary Clinton also played these cards very hard and, as everyone knows, went down in flames. I went from very successful businessman to top TV star to President of the United States on my first try. I think that would qualify as not smart, but genius, and a very stable genius at that. Which I thought was just hilarious. I thought that was a hilarious tweet from Trump. It got a bunch of people all up in a tizzy. You know, the media's analyzing it and saying, my God, look at this. This is proof that he's insane. He's trolling you people, for crying out loud. I'm not saying it's even necessarily a smart thing to tweet. It's just, it's not an honest, attempt at him defending his mental stability. He's literally trying to troll you people into oblivion, and I think he's succeeding in some ways. Again, not saying it's necessarily the smartest thing to tweet, but the thing about the whole the whole psychiatric evaluation from all these people and all these psychiatrists, there was a book that was put forward that has this list of psychiatrists that have basically come out and said that Trump is basically crazy. I mean, you've got all these things, and what this is basically a clear violation of the Goldwater Rule. Now, the Goldwater Rule was set up for President, because of things that happened to somebody who was running for president named Barry Goldwater. It's basically sort of similar to what's happening to President Trump right now, how everyone is saying that he's crazy. It was a similar thing back for Barry Goldwater. So I'm going to read to you the Goldwater Rule. The Goldwater Rule is the informal name given to Section 7 in the American Psychiatric Association's APA Principles of Medical Ethics. That states that it is unethical for psychiatrists to give a professional opinion about public figures they have not examined, you think? In person, and from whom they have not obtained consent to discuss their mental health in public statements. It is named after presidential candidate Barry Goldwater. The issue arose in 1967 when Fact published the article, quote, "The Unconscious of a Conservative," a special issue on the mind of Barry Goldwater. The magazine polled psychiatrists about U.S. Senator Barry Goldwater, and whether he was fit to be president. The editor, Ralph Ginsburg, was sued for libel in Goldwater versus Ginsburg, where Goldwater won $75,000, approximately $592,000 today, in damages. So it didn't work out too well for them then, and it probably won't work out too well for them now. It's total insanity, and with Goldwater, you actually, it's pretty similar to Trump's situation. You had these people literally coming out and saying that he was going to blow up the whole world, and this actually manifested in a ad from LBJ when he was campaigning against Barry Goldwater in 1964. So let's roll that ad.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 6, 8, 9,
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
These are the stakes. To make a world in which all of God's children can live, or to go into the dark. We must either love each other, or we must die.
Vote for President Johnson on November 3rd. The stakes are too high for you to stay home.
So, I mean, you could see this nowadays literally being like a Trump ad. I mean, you've got the little girl plucking away the petals on the flower, and then you see the nuclear explosion, just complete insane hyperbolic rhetoric, and you see it mirrored nowadays when it comes to Trump. It's really on the same level, and it's just crazy that they really keep pushing for this. Now, this is all lining up perfectly with this new book that's coming out from this guy, Michael Wolff, the book titled Fire and Fury, which is supposed to be this inside look into the Trump White House, and what people around the president are basically doing and saying about him. Now, the book, the author has been basically fully discredited at this point. He's somebody who writes fiction, basically, in many cases. Some of the things in the book may be true, but for the most part, it's going to be total BS. You've got people who are going to be misquoted. You've got things that are going to be exaggerated. You've got things that are going to be completely made up. You've got in his own words, he basically says he sort of catches the atmosphere of what's going on and then puts it forward, and it's just not the kind of thing that you can rely on whatsoever. But you see, all these people in the media now, of course, citing this book, saying, "Oh, look how crazy the president is." And this guy, Michael Wolff, I mean, first of all, the guy looks like a mixture of, Dr. Evil and Nosferatu or something. Does not look like the most trustworthy guy in the world for sure. But he's going around making the rounds on all the media outlets, and he's going around saying, all these people say that around the president say he's mentally unstable. They say he acts like a child and he's totally unpredictable. And then he also goes on to say that the 25th Amendment is mentioned all the time. Now that's important. So let's play that clip of Michael Wolff.
So this is what happened here. What's going on here? This is, I think not an exaggeration and not unreasonable. And it's not unreasonable to say this is 25th Amendment kind of stuff. This is,
did anybody say that in the West Wing to you?
All the time.
25th Amendment. They would bring up the 25th Amendment?
Yes, actually they would say we're not sort of in the mid-period. We're not at a 25th Amendment level yet.
So, Michael Wolff is saying that the 25th Amendment is being brought up all the time. This is a guy who is lacking in credibility, definitely lacking in credibility. So you really can't take anything in this book seriously. And some of the things, again, have been basically either proven to be false or there's just no way that they are true. So on its face, they have to be false. Things like the president not knowing who John Boehner is, for example, a guy that he has golfed with multiple times and mentioned multiple times. Just, insane things like that are put into this book that are clearly not true. But he says that they mention the 25th Amendment of the United States. Well, there is a problem with that, because he then goes on in an interview to say that he, in fact, did not speak with any of the cabinet officials or the VP. So let's roll that clip.
Did you speak with any members of the president's cabinet for this book?
I did not.
You did not?
I did not.
And did you speak with the vice president?
I did not.
Now, the fact that he didn't speak with any of the actual cabinet officials or the vice president himself is very telling. And when it comes to the 25th Amendment, it is definitely very, very consequential, because when it comes to the 25th Amendment, you actually need the cabinet and the vice president to be able to make the 25th Amendment happen. So, what is the 25th Amendment? Let's get into it. The 25th Amendment of the United States, the 25th Amendment to the United States Constitution, rather. Now, the only part that really matters for this video, and that matters in context of the situation with the president, or the possible 25th Amendment situation with the president, would be Section 4. So let me read that to you. Whenever the vice president and a majority of either the principal officers of the executive departments or of such other body as Congress may by law provide transmit the president pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives their written declaration that the president is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, the vice president shall immediately assume the powers and duties as acting president. Thereafter, when the president transmits to the president pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives his written declaration that no inability exists, he shall resume the powers and duties of his office unless the Vice President and a majority of either the principal officers of the executive department or of such other body as Congress may by law provide transmit within 4 days to the President pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives the written declaration that the President is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office. Thereupon, Congress shall decide the issue, assembling within 48 hours for that purpose, if not in session. If the Congress, within 21 days after receipt of the latter written declaration, or if Congress is not in session within 21 days after Congress is required to assemble, determines by 2/3 vote of both houses that the President is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, the Vice President shall continue to discharge the same as acting President. Otherwise, the President shall resume his powers and duties of his office. So basically what that's saying is what would have to happen for the 25th Amendment, the removal of the President, it would have to take a majority of the President's cabinet and the Vice President, first of all, declaring that the President is unfit to be the President of the United States. Now, never mind that this is something that was put in place for John F. Kennedy, who was kind of shot in the head. He was probably unable to perform his duties as president. Definitely not meant for removing a president that you just don't agree with. Absolutely insane. But so what this is saying is the majority of the cabinet and the vice president would have to say the president is unable to fulfill his duties. The president can then fight that if the cabinet and the vice president again decide to say that he is still unable to fulfill his duties, then it would go to Congress. And then Congress would have to vote by 2/3 majority in both houses, both the Senate and the House, which are both controlled by Republicans. They would have to vote 2/3 in both the House and the Senate. And that is just something that is not going to happen. The 25th Amendment is just the longest of long shots when it comes to insane, leftist liberal propositions to get rid of the President of the United States. But I think there actually is a little bit of a plan behind this. A lot of people think this is just a full-on move of desperation by the liberals, by the media, by the Democrats, pushing for Trump being insane, pushing for the 25th Amendment. They feel like it's a complete overplay of their hand, and it is in many ways. But I think there actually is a little bit of an underlying plan, and an article from CNN, although I don't think they meant to, sort of illustrates this. So this is from CNN. Removing a president using the 25th Amendment would require a political apocalypse. The 25th Amendment is back in the news, and so this bears repeating. Again, the type of event in which you could imagine President Donald Trump's cabinet and his vice president engaging in a political mutiny against him and removing him from power using the 25th Amendment would require something like a presidential coma or a disagreement of such epic proportions as to threaten the fabric of the country or its very existence. It's hard to imagine. I guess maybe unless you're some leftist, because they think that at any moment President Trump is going to turn the world into that scene from Terminator, in the park where the nuclear explosion goes off. So it's just absolutely ludicrous. These people themselves have actually lost their mind, which is the ironic part of all this. But anyways, the amendment was ratified in the wake of John F. Kennedy's assassination and debilitating illness of Dwight D. Eisenhower, and it requires a crisis on that level to be enacted. So here you have CNN admitting full well that there's no way that the 25th Amendment is going to happen. It's a total pipe dream. It's not going to happen. I know some people think that there was this deep state move that Mike Pence was maybe plotting to go through with the 25th Amendment, and others in Trump's cabinet, people like H.R. McMaster, possibly General Kelly, and others. But again, it is an absolute long shot, and the piece actually goes on further to discredit the idea of the 25th Amendment being an actual possibility. Republicans, Trump's party, control both houses of Congress. That calculation could change after the midterm elections, and that's key, but it's virtually impossible for Democrats to get a two-thirds majority in either chamber. Republican lawmakers would have to turn on their own president. Multiple members of his cabinet were touting his fitness this past weekend on TV shows when asked to comment about questions on his mental fitness, including Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, saying, quote, "I've never questioned his mental fitness," he told CNN's Elise Labat. "I have no reason to question his mental fitness." CIA Director Mike Pompeo says, quote, "Those statements are just absurd," he said on Fox News Sunday. U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, someone who, during the presidential campaign, was no fan of President Trump. She was, in fact, a never-Trumper. So she's someone who doesn't necessarily like President Trump on policy side, on policy-wise in some ways, but probably even more so his personality, which is the thing that seems to be the problem for most people. Nikki Haley says, "No one questions the stability of the president," she said on ABC's This Week. Now remember, Michael Wolff, the guy who wrote this book, he said himself he didn't even talk to anybody in Trump's cabinet. He didn't talk to the vice president. You've got people in Trump's cabinet clearly coming out and saying, look, we're not questioning his fitness, his mental health. So the CNN piece then goes on to mention Nixon, Richard M. Nixon, and the piece goes on to talk about Richard Nixon and nuclear war and how his cabinet would maybe disobey an order for him from him to do a nuclear strike, and they bring up Nixon, but then segue into impeachment, of course, because you can't bring up Richard Nixon without talking about impeachment, and we're also talking about Trump, so you can't bring up a story about Trump where we bring up Nixon without talking about impeachment. I mean, come on. So the piece then goes on. Speaking of Nixon, impeachment, the serious idea of which also seems far-fetched at this point, with regard to Trump, is written into the Constitution as a more appropriate avenue to remove a president. A little bit more appropriate. Yeah, that's a very interesting thing for them to say, because I think they know full well. I mean, it's clear that they know full well that the 25th Amendment isn't going to be, it's not a realistic option. But what I think's happening right now is the idea from the beginning was to push for impeachment, because they know impeachment is something that's more plausible. With impeachment, instead of having to have the two-thirds of the cabinet and the vice president, and then probably, because Trump was more than likely obviously would fight something like that, you're going to have then two-thirds of the House and the Senate vote to get rid of Trump. And yes, there are some never-Trumpers in there. There are some snakes, the people like McCain, the Jeff Flakes, the people like that would, possibly turn on Trump. But there's no way that they would have enough to have two-thirds of both houses, not even close. But with impeachment, it's not quite so hard. With impeachment, all it takes is a simple majority of the House and then two-thirds of the Senate, which is a much more realistic goal from the evil Democrat perspective of trying to overthrow a duly elected president. So this is what their actual goal is. They know that the Russian narrative is imploding. That's what they were pushing for in terms of impeachment. They were going to drag out this Russian investigation and use this to hopefully impeach the president at some point. Now, they thought they were going to be able to find something on him, which hasn't proved to be the case at all. So they don't have anything on him to actually impeach him, but they were still going to try to use the Russian narrative to impeach him. Well, now that's completely imploding, it's completely failing, and they know that. So they're trying to now shift the narrative to Trump's mental fitness. They're trying to say that he's just crazy. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's completely unstable. He's going to get us all killed. We need to do something. We need to get this man out of office because he is clearly insane. And this is now the narrative they're going to push. They know it's not going to work with the 25th Amendment, but again, they're now shifting this narrative. So this is going to be now what they push for in terms of impeachment. Because if you've noticed, you've seen the shift in the media. They're not talking about impeachment as much. You don't see Maxine Waters yelling about impeachment so much. You don't see Nancy Pelosi yelling about impeachment so much. You don't see all these people, yelling about it. It's funny, they're talking about Trump's mental fitness, and you've got people like Nancy Pelosi in the, they're in the House or whatever. So just insane that they have that kind of a double standard. But it's politics, especially the Democrats. What do you expect? But they're going to now push for Trump being crazy, and they're going to try to impeach him on the fact that he is mentally unstable. Now, even that is something that's obviously not going to happen right now because the Democrats don't control the House or the Senate. But the problem is we now have the 2018 midterm elections coming up. Now, with the midterm elections, there is basically, I think, all of the House seats, or a majority of the House seats are up for grabs, and you've got something like 30 some odd Senate seats that are up for grabs. Now, this could be troubling because, oftentimes once a president gets elected, in his first year, in the midterms, they usually, the opposing party usually winds up doing pretty well. So there's a good chance that we're going to lose some seats in the midterm elections. And if we lose the House, you're going to see this push from the Democrats to impeach Trump on the basis of him being mentally ill, of him not being able to perform his offices of, his duties as the President of the United States, him not being fit to be the President of the United States. Because again, the Russian collusion narrative is completely imploding on them, and this is their desperate attempt to try to shift the narrative and still be able to push for impeachment while distancing themselves from the Russian investigation. So, with that, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please subscribe. Please share the video to your friends. Please leave a comment. Let me know what you thought about the video, any future topics you'd like me to talk about, or just any general input. I always appreciate it. If you would like to follow me on social media, I will have my Twitter and Gab links in the description. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So with that, I hope you have a wonderful day, and may the force be with you.